Hi, this is Caroline from The Happy Sensitive, and I'm here with another video in the Spiritual Bullshit series. Now, this one features a really, really beautiful metaphor, and I love metaphors, but I don't like the way they've used it here. Okay, so let's go through it. At this time, there are many millions of beings like yourself who are aware of the bigger picture that is unfolding. In other words, you're very smart. The bigger picture that is unfolding, awakening and understanding the divine manifestation. As a guardian of light, you are most powerful and effective when you maintain a high frequency. This is like spirituality 101. These kinds of words. You are a guardian of light. You are most powerful and effective. You have to maintain a high frequency. And there's not much wrong with this per se, but whenever people start talking about a high frequency, it usually ends up where this particular message ends up. When you maintain a high frequency vibration of joy, gratitude, and appreciation. Here we go. So you're supposed to be happy, grateful, and appreciative at all times to maintain your high frequency. Otherwise, you are going to sink. You're going to lose that vibration. You're not going to do your job as a guardian of light. No pressure. So, joy, gratitude, and appreciation. These emotions, I wouldn't say gratitude is an emotion, by the way. And appreciation isn't really an emotion either. But okay, that's not so important. These emotions allow you to float on the energy current that is coming with more intensity every day. Now, is there an energy current that is coming with more intensity every day? I believe so. I really believe that there is something happening right now in our world, in our planet. We're being bombarded with all kinds of energies that when you work with them, allow you to access and resolve deep-seated issues. Because in order to access and resolve deep-seated issues, you first need to feel them. And if you don't feel them, if you're numbed out, if you're shut down, you can't heal it, right? And right now, what a lot of the energies that are pummeling the planet are doing is allowing you to feel that deep-seated stuff, aka pain, okay? So all your old chronic issues, things that maybe you thought were no longer a problem for you, if it hasn't been resolved, it's likely surfacing right now. And that probably feels terrible. But the good news is it's surfacing so we can deal with it, right? And it's happening in our bodies right now. It's also happening in politics. There is so much crap coming to the surface, right? There's so much, so many reports coming out about what's going on, what's been going on behind the scenes, things that I think many of us 3 years ago, we never would have even imagined. And now many of us are like, yeah, I'm not really surprised. You know, after the whole pandemic thing, I'm not really surprised. I mean, so same thing there. If the crap surfaces where you can see it and you can be shocked by it and you can be hurt by it, you can be upset about it, well, at least you can address it. So this is happening everywhere right now. So definitely agree with that. I don't have a different explanation for that. And I think it just helps to be aware of that and see that we're in this phase right now where there's a lot of deep stuff surfacing. It's hard, but also it helps you actually resolve and clear those things when you know what you're doing. Okay. So going back to joy, gratitude, and appreciation, these emotions allow you to float on the energy current that is coming with more intensity each day. Dense emotions like fear, anger, frustration, and sadness are like weights up on your feet. They will pull you down and you drown. Oh my God. Okay. So I love the river metaphor because there's another part of this message where they just really went into the river metaphor in detail about like if you're going down a really rapidly moving current, you're trying to fight the current, it doesn't work, right? You're not strong enough to fight the current, so you have to kind of try to stay afloat and then go down the river with it. But also the metaphor was not exactly 100% correct, because what happens if you get to a point where there's a waterfall? Like you're floating, and then you hit Niagara Falls, you go down the falls, good luck with that, right? So it's not like just floating down a rapidly moving river is always going to just be the best solution. Like it kind of depends on where the river's going. So that first of all. But what is really, really typical about this message is this idea that fear, anger, frustration, and sadness are like weights upon your feet that will pull you down and you drown. Now, I want to talk about a few elements here because some of this makes physical sense, and then some of it is fear-based, and it's actually not correct. In a lot of spirituality, there's this idea that lighter is better. And it kind of depends on what you're doing, what you're trying to figure out. Yes, there is a sense that when you're trying to figure out like which decision to take, which direction to go in, if you have a sensation in your body and it's very heavy in response and it's very closed and it's very tense, that can be an indication that your body's trying to tell you this is not a good idea for you. And that if you feel light and open and relaxed in response to a particular idea, a particular direction, that actually is a good idea. There is a kind of body reading that works that way. But that's not the whole picture. Because at the same time, we have something else. Being in a body means having weight. Being dissociated, being out of body, means being light. And so a lot of people who struggle with the pain and the difficulty and whatever's going on in their life that they don't like, they like to feel lighter, right? They want to feel lighter. They want to be out of their body, out of their life. They want to float. And floating is not, that kind of floating is not healthy. And the problem in this message is that the desire to be light always and never feel heavy and never feel grounded, because being heavy also means you're grounded, right? Very often when I work with clients who are barely grounded or very stressed out and kind of like they're half out of their body, I bring them back and I guide them to bring them back into their body, and they're going to feel heavy compared to how they felt before. Yes, they feel heavy, but they also feel calmer, less scattered, less all over the place. So the thing is, heavy is not bad per se. And that's the problem I have with this message, that this idea like, oh, if you're feeling heavy in your body, it's always bad. No. If you're doing a certain kind of internal reading on which way to go, a heavy feeling can indicate that this is not the right path for you. But in general, in your body, there needs to be a certain amount of heaviness. Otherwise, you're not grounded. It's like when you're really tense and you're you're like this, and then you go and get a massage and you relax, and a lot of people will notice that they feel heavy. Their body feels heavy, where before they felt busy and frantic and light, but also stressed out. And then they get the massage, or maybe you do a long yoga session and you feel heavy and everything just kind of settles. And suddenly you feel like a big bag of something and you're just sitting here on the earth. That is a very good sign. But if you associate heaviness with bad and light with good, you're going to freak out. You're like, oh my God, I'm trapped. I'm too heavy. I'm going to drown. And that's exactly what this message is trying to do. It's saying everything that feels heavy in your body is going to make you drown, which is, the sad thing is a lot of people already have that fear. A lot of people who are out of their body, who are very skittish, are afraid of that heaviness. They're afraid of that containment. They think that the safe thing to do is kind of run around and be everywhere. It's not, right? Like if you're out on the street and there's really bad weather, you're just running around because you're scared. That is not a safe situation to be. It's better to be inside a small, solid, strong building. And yes, you're going to feel contained. You're going to feel like you cannot go everywhere because you can't. You have to stay in the building, right? But there's a certain protection there. And it's the same with your body. Being in your body, if you're used to being out of body, if you're used to flying around and being very scattered, being in your body at first can feel very confined. It's like it's a smaller space. It's heavier. But it's not a bad thing. It's not a bad thing. And similarly, dense emotions like fear, anger, and frustration and sadness are like weights. They're like weights up on your feet that I would say sometimes you really need them to pull you down to earth. I was working with a client recently who was very scattered. She was like, oh, it's like I can't focus. I'm all over the place. And I worked with her, like, what are you feeling in your body? And she didn't know. But there was sadness all over her face. A lot of sadness. I said, I know. I can just see it. I can take a picture right now and show you. You're feeling sad. And it took her a while to connect, but she could find the sadness. And when she found the sadness and she was able to feel it, she got grounded. She got in her body. She no doubt felt the weight of that, but she needed the weight, right? Just like a balloon, one of those hot air balloons. Hot air balloons have weights to get them back to earth. When they want to fly away, they ditch some of the sand. And then when they want to go down again, they let some of the hot air out. But they need the weights to keep the balloon from flying away. When you're trying to get into the cart, there's all these weights to make sure the balloon doesn't fly off, right? And just like that, we need weight too. If we don't have any weight, we fly away, especially if you're sensitive and you're sensitive to energy and you're kind of psychically attuned to things. You're going to fly away more easily. You need the weight. The weight is there to help you, to keep you grounded. It's not going to make you drown. Okay, let's continue with the message here. Again, we say to you, practice maintaining high frequency vibrations and emotions. You are most effective as a change agent. It sounds very official, a change agent. Show your badge. You are most effective as a change agent. You are more fully connected with divine source and therefore guided to the places and people that are ready and willing to shift. Now, I do agree with some of this in the sense that, some folks are really good at just going round and round and round, creating more anger, creating more fear, freaking themselves out in their mind. So if you have a tendency to ruminate and then you feel more fear and more fear or more angry and more frustration, that's not helpful. Then there is a point where that becomes like a huge weight that drags you down, right? But those are not your true emotions. Your mind can create a lot of things, usually because the mind is afraid of feeling and dealing with what's actually already there. And so very often people are afraid of feeling vulnerable, love to create lots of anger. They're not going to say, I love creating anger, but they're comfortable with the anger. They're comfortable with being frustrated and pissed off because they feel like they're in control, right? And feeling vulnerable and sad and powerless is like being out of control. And so you actually need to have that whole range of emotions and allow yourself to feel the whole range of emotions. And when you do, you're going to move through them quite quickly. They're not going to pull you down. They're not going to drown you. They're going to ground you when they need to, and you're going to move through it, and then it's done. It's only when you artificially keep pushing yourself to go round and round and round a certain thought circle that creates particular emotions, then it can become a problem, right? Like people who are afraid to cry, they're terrified of crying, they're terrified of feeling vulnerable. So every time they feel any tears come up, they look for something out there to be mad about. And there's plenty of stuff to be mad about. And so they'll just spend weeks and weeks getting upset and worked up about things that are really not relevant to their life right now. Not really. And all that they really need to do is just feel their sadness and cry for a bit and feel vulnerable, and then they can keep moving. But the problem with a message like this, it doesn't distinguish between the emotions that are intuitive, that are true to you, versus the feeling states that you can create by thinking really hard a certain way, right? And so if you are thinking very hard a certain way, then yes, it's more helpful to think in terms of gratitude and appreciation and keep your focus there. But that doesn't mean that you try to tune out and avoid any feelings that feel heavy. No. We want to keep our mind in a positive space, but that doesn't mean that the mind should become blind to what's happening in the body. You're still going to have anger. You're still going to have sadness. You're still going to feel powerless sometimes. You're still going to have all the feelings. The point is to not make it more than it is. Not add to it. The mind is good at adding to stuff. So what a message like this does is it creates a fear, and it amplifies the fear that's already, a lot of people already have. Like, oh my God, if I'm gonna feel my grief, I'm gonna die. I'm gonna drown. I'm never gonna get out of it. I'm always gonna be sad. These are very, very common fears that people have about difficult feelings. It's like, if I get into this, if I let myself feel this, bad things are gonna happen, right? If I let myself feel depressed, I'll never be happy again. Maybe I'll kill myself. Maybe I'll do something horrible. Like, there's all these fears. And sometimes from having seen a parent or another adult not deal with their emotions very well. But also there's just this mind fear, because the mind often battles the body and battles the emotions. It's like the mind's like, I want to have control. I want to know what's going to happen. I want to know how this is going to go. And your emotions need to be felt. And you don't know exactly how it's going to go. And you don't know exactly how long it's going to take. And you have to trust that you can get through it. And of course, you have to have a certain practice about feeling your feelings. A lot of people never learn. Like, it's okay if you never learned, but it's important to learn to feel your feelings and not get stuck in a loop in your head, because that will indeed make you very unnecessarily heavy and stressed out. Okay, so they're saying you are more fully connected with divine source and therefore guided to the places and people that are ready and willing to shift when you're in a high vibration state. You will offer a vibration which will trigger awareness in another, a vibration which will anchor a new expanded consciousness. You will offer a life raft to those who are willing to trust their divine nature and surrender to who they are. Magnificent beings of something like divine, I guess. It's always divine. So what's interesting is the message ends with willing to trust their divine nature, right? Like, in order to feel your feelings, you have to trust your body. The problem is with these kinds of messages, it creates this dichotomy, this split. It's saying you got to fight against these things in your body that are trying to drag you down, and you got to maintain this like high vibe mindset, and it pits the mind against the body. That doesn't work. It doesn't work, because your body is actually trying to help you. It's actually giving you feedback. It's giving you energies that help you do and help you deal with what you need to deal with today. Okay, the light's weird. Sorry about that. So apparently we just hit a certain kind of level of light outdoors, and now everything is I'm just going to go through this endlessly. Okay, we'll just have to do it like this. What was it again? See, I'm a guardian of light. I have to actually manage. I have to guard the little light that's on my computer screen here. And I'm not a very good guardian because the light's kind of weird right now. Darn it. Okay. So I hope that makes sense. But this is such a typical message. And a lot of people who channel stuff like this, they also seem to really believe that they need to maintain this high mindset. And I remember in the early days of the Happy Sensitive, I would have people come to me sometimes being really proud. They're like, yes! It was like a competition, like, yes, I'm happy every day. I was just like, every single day. They're like, I'm happy all the time. And it's like, you're happy all the time. It doesn't sound possible or healthy. And it would just be this mind pressure to always focus on things that are good and positive, and like never let anything in that is the opposite. And it creates a really, really unbalanced situation in your life because you're just cutting off all the feedback from your body. You're like, body, I don't want to know what's going on. I don't want to know what you know. I don't want to hear anything. I don't want my intuition to speak, because your intuition comes from your body. I don't want to hear any of it. I just want to be happy. I got to be happy at all costs. It's kind of crazy. Like, it really is, because you're interacting with the world, and you're constantly everything in you is responding to what's happening around you, also to tell you what's going on, right? Like, you just think about a very simple situation. Thousands of years ago, our ancestors in the cave, and they're sitting in the cave and they're just like, I just want to be happy. And then they feel this sense of fear because their body heard something rustle in the bushes. And they're like, no, I'm going to ignore it because I need to be happy and keep my vibe high and attract positive experiences. And then there's a tiger that's creeping closer and closer and closer, and they just ignore it because they're like, no, I got to stay high vibe to be safe. It's kind of crazy, right? And it's the same with us. Like, sometimes there are things that you have to let yourself feel. I'm afraid. I'm scared. Like, I'm scared. I'm worried. I'm sad. And take time with those feelings. Let yourself sink. Let yourself sink to the bottom of the riverbed and sit there for a while. And just sit there and let everything process. And then after that, you can float up to the surface again and go down the river again and all of that. Like, maybe that's a better metaphor. Like, you can actually float down for a while, sit on the riverbed, have that connection with yourself, have that inner quiet from just allowing whatever is there to be there. And then you can just float up again and just continue your journey. If you're constantly rushing down a river, I don't care how good you are at floating, at some point you're going to be stressed out and you're going to be overwhelmed and exhausted and get sick. You're floating down a river for 5 days in the cold, rushing water, and you can't eat or sleep or do anything. You're just trying to stay afloat. That's insane. Nobody can do that. And that's the same kind of pressure you're putting on yourself if you're always trying to be high vibe and I gotta be of the best high vibration and have positive expectations and thoughts, and I can't and this whole dichotomy of like, this is positive, this is negative. No, that doesn't help. You got to think about what is real and what is fantasy. Sometimes the real stuff is just heavy. That's just where things are at. And trying to make it light when it's not makes it a fantasy. And then you start living in a fantasy, and that's actually really dangerous. And sometimes the good stuff, things going on in your life are pretty light. And it is pretty easy and it is fun. And if you have a worry brain, you might overcomplicate it. You might create these rocks that are pulling you down just because you're expecting the worst. Yeah, and then it's not necessary. But that's different. That's different from worrying about like, oh my God, I have some grief. Now I'm going to sink into the river and drown. No, you're not going to drown. It's okay. Okay, so that was my rant on this topic of drowning because you're feeling sad. No, you're not going to drown by feeling sad. And remember that river metaphor of is like, it's fine to think about, I gotta stay afloat, but it's okay to also just sink to the bottom for a bit and just stay there. And then all that water is rushing over your head, right? All that busy, dramatic energy is just, and you're sitting at the bottom of the riverbed where things are pretty calm. It's kind of nice. It's kind of nice. Yeah, it's heavy. We're heavy now. Oh, heavy. Yeah, sometimes like the heavy place is where the peace is. It's not up in the frothy surface where everything's flying around and everything's chaotic. It's right here in the middle of the anger, or in the middle of the grief, or in the middle of the powerlessness. Last thing I don't like about this message is, again, it puts so much pressure on you. If you're reading this and you're a responsible person and you want to be a force for positive things in the world, then it's like, well, if you want to be a change agent and you want to be connected to divine source, here are all the things you have to do. And it's actually impossible, but you have to be perfect at maintaining this impossible vibe that'll just completely pull you out of your body. But you have to believe in it, and you have to believe harder to make everything go well, and to make sure that people are guided and willing to shift and to offer your vibration. And it's like, let's just not. Let's just no. Just keep things simple. Because when you think about someone's vibration, it's not what you decide it needs to be. That's happening up here. Your vibration that you're offering to the world is all the layers. It's the tip of the iceberg that's above the water, and it's the big part of the iceberg that's below the water. And those are all the things in your body that, if you try to suppress them, if you try to push them away, if you try to squash them because you're terrified of them, if you don't acknowledge and incorporate and allow those feelings, then what you get is you get a whole bunch of different vibes going out. You get this vibe which is saying, I am divine light and I am peaceful, I'm here to help, and la 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 la. And then you've got this inner, let's say, body vibe that's going out. It's going, I'm gonna drown, oh my god, I can't feel this. And which one do you think screams louder of these vibes? This one, you may think this is the loudest one, but it's not. People are not going to respond to this. People are going to respond to this. What's coming from here? What's coming from your body? And you may not see it, but other people will see it. Just like with my client who had grief coming up and she had no idea what it was. But it was all over her face. I don't think I was exceptionally perceptive about that. I think any one of you watching, having seen my client's face in that moment, would have said, oh, you're sad. It was really obvious, right? That was the vibe that was coming off her. Sadness. In her head, she was, I don't know, trying to do something else, but that's not what was coming across. So the irony is, the more you try to force the signal that you put out, the more you try to control it, the more you try to make it something, the more you try to separate out, this is what I'm supposed to be, this is what I'm not supposed to be. The more you do that, the less say you actually have about the vibe you're putting out. The less connected you are to what you're actually putting out. All that stuff that you're trying to so hard to not be gets a much bigger say, is much louder, is much easier for other people to pick up on. So this is why, if you want to be a change agent, if you want to channel some kind of divine something into society, the best thing you can do is make peace with what's going on inside of you. Get to know what's really happening inside of you, not what you think you should be doing or how you should be feeling or the vibe you should be maintaining, but get to know what's actually going on. Because then the vibe that you put out is coherent. And it may not look like the way you think it should look, but it will be coherent. It won't be like, I'm thinking of a colleague of mine from years ago. He had this weird thing going on where on the outside he was projecting a certain image, but then on the inside he was being the opposite. It was really bizarre. So on the outside he would project kind of like, I'm confident and I'm okay. On the inside he was like, it was really obvious of how there was this moment he was walking down the hall and I just saw it and I was just like, and I just burst out laughing. He was like, and he was kind of freaked out by me. He was like, what's going on? What? And I was like, oh my God, you're the person you're trying so hard to be on the outside, the way you're behaving on the outside is exact opposite of what's going on inside of you. Like the exact precise opposite. And he was just like, okay, running away. But that's what happens. And then the problem is you may think in your head, well, I am who I think I am in my head, because the more you push away the stuff on the inside, the more disconnected you get. But, just like my client, the grief is still there. Just because she didn't feel it, just because she didn't notice it at first, didn't mean it was gone. It was very obvious. It was very loud. And yes, it took her a moment, but she was able to reconnect with it and then notice it and feel it and be like, oh yeah, I feel it now. But this is the illusion in the mind, the illusion that you can control what your vibe is through your focus alone, and you can squash everything you don't like, and you can just create this kind of perfect picture of what your mind thinks you should be. And none of that is very divine. And none of that yells trust. It just creates chaos. So then you're floating down the river, but you're like this person, you're like, it's better to just be coherent and sometimes sink to the bottom and then come up again and just float a little bit and come to the bottom and maybe, go to the side of the river and hold on to a tree root for a while. And then the goal is not to make this perfect journey downstream by being superhumanly buoyant all the time. It's not how it works. Okay. So I think that was that for today. I could talk about this a very, very long time, and I'm going to cut myself off because I think I've shared what I needed to share. Thanks so much for listening, and see you on the next one.